Mr. Secretary General of Council of Europe, welcome to Radio Free Europe.
Thank you very much.
It happened that you arrive in Moldova at times then when Moldovan authorities are asking the separatist regime in Tiraspol to respect more the human rights and the free movement. For instance, Chisinau authorities are asking to release the people who were in prison in Tiraspol, or even to close several checkpoints and to broadcast the national media on the left bank of River Dniester. I would like to ask you, how do you see these demands made by the Moldovan government and to what they can lead from your point of view, of course?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to meet and to have this discussion. You know, for the Council of Europe that I represent, it is very simple and very clear what we are doing. We are doing all the possible to strengthen democracy, human rights and rule of law on all the member states and in the countries that are member of the Council of Europe. And the question you are asking about Transnistria, it is very clear. It is a part of the continent, of the European family. It is a part of the Moldovan territory, and I think that we have really strong dedication to human rights in all regions, and also there it's an evidence. We can only support this element about human rights, and then the best way to improve this, I think it is also the role of the Moldovan authorities doing this, and to do the best to assure that to make sure that there is a good protection and good implementation of human rights on all territory, even if it's difficult, even if the context is quite difficult. It is a complex world right now. We see this, and in those moments, it's particularly important to remain really strongly concentrated on the values.
I would like to ask you how the Council of Europe can help Moldovan authorities to assure that the human rights are respected in a separatist region like Transnistria.
It's quite difficult, obviously, because as you mentioned, separatist region, Transnistria, we know the history since more than 30 years, and we know how complicated it is. But it remains one very central element that human rights are absolutely key. We are just today launching the new action plan from the Council of Europe for the Republic of Moldova. And this after 12 years of very strong collaboration together, strengthening democracy, rule of law and human rights. That's the first element of the answer. We work together, we are partners, and we are present to strengthen also the human rights in Moldova. That's the first point. And I think the second point is to as I mentioned before, I think it is also to the Moldovan authorities to do this, to find the best way to do this in the context that we have, but knowing that the Council of Europe is present to support this work, but also being present to see how it happens, and also to be present to have discussion when we think that it is something maybe to improve in this context.
But generally speaking, how the Council of Europe assess the situation of the human rights in Transnistria compared to the situation of the human rights on the right bank of Dniester?
Well, we have always an issue with human rights in different parts of Europe, on the continent, outside the continent. But it is clear that the situation of human rights in territories like Transnistria in the left bank, it is quite complicated, because it is quite difficult also for us to have an access, to have an assessment how it works. And it makes a huge difference with the right bank and with Moldova, where we are really present to assess the situation and to work together to improve the situation. It makes a real difference since a very long time, by the way. But it is not because it is difficult, not because it is a difficult situation since a long time, that we will renounce and say, okay, it's not more our problem. No, it remains our problem because we are here with the Council of Europe. It is a strong dedication to human rights, but it is not just for human rights. It is first of all for the people, for the population, That's so important. And that's why the action plan, the presence of the Council of Europe in the whole Moldova, we have 28 projects that we will implement in the next years, strengthening, for example, the reform for the justice, fighting against corruption, and on human rights, freedom of expression and media. I mean, all those elements will help. We will support with this Republic of Moldova to improve the path, for European aspirations and European values, and it will also help, but it's more complicated, I see the point, with the left bank.
Let's remain a little bit at this point with helping the justice system in the Republic of Moldova. So right now in the country is undergoing a big reform, in the justice sector. But the problem is that the party from the opposition and even people who are working in the judicial system, they are criticizing this reform. And I would like to ask you, like the most important person from the Council of Europe, how do you assess these attempts of the Moldovan authorities to reform the justice system?
It is necessary. And we are supporting those efforts. But we must do this also together, in a collaboration and always discussing all the points of the reform. To see that the people directly concerned by the reform, the professionals directly concerned by the reform, are not always, not in every moment happy about the reform. It is normal, When you change something, when you try to do a reform, you will also change the habits, you will change how it was happening until now. And it's pretty normal to see not opposition, but questions and maybe, not always an easy situation. But the reform, it is essential. It is essential. Why? We need, and all countries need, to have strong, independent institutions. And we need always for all the institutions to adapt to a changing world. And I think it is not possible to speak from democracy and to have a democracy without to have a strong, independent legislative, strong, independent executive, and strong, independent justice. That means also to make the reform, to have all the elements to be sure that we have all the conditions fulfilled, and to fight as clearly as possible, as strong as possible against corruption. I think this is what could be a huge problem for the institutions when they are corrupt institutions. We have difficulties, and I know that it's quite difficult to fight against this, but we must engage in this, and that's why we are so strongly engaged at the side of Moldova with the authorities to do this path together.
Also, during this visit in Chisinau, you will have a meeting with students. Yeah. And you will talk with them about the disinformation like a threat to Europe. In Moldova, people are speaking a lot about disinformation. They are speaking about this problem, but it's hard to touch this problem. Yeah? You don't have it in front of you. And I would like to ask you, what are the main or the better ways to fight disinformation, maybe in according to all the member states of the Council of Europe? Did you have an example?
It is exactly why I wanted to meet students in a university. I think the main element, the first element we must think about is about education. Education, to ensure a good and strong access to education for all the people. And the students, it is the younger generation. It is the generation that will make the Republic of Moldova from tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. We must think about the next 10, 20, 25 years. And we will prepare this now. That's why it's so important. Education, it is absolutely key. That's the first element. Second element, I think we see right now that with the polarization of the debate, with the social media, we have an issue. 30 years ago, all the political debates, they took place in meeting rooms with people meeting physically. And it is not exactly the same situation if you have a debate like we could have here, or if you are just discussing, if it is a discussion through social media without to engage in a direct contact. And the third element, it is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence could be a huge positive element for the human development for the next generation and decades. It should be possible to take the benefits of the artificial intelligence, but it is also related with huge risks. About disinformation, about fake, deep fake, and all those elements. And also here, we have as an answer education, as I mentioned at the beginning, but also the Council of Europe developed a framework convention on artificial intelligence to make sure that it will be possible to develop artificial intelligence without to create threats for the values, for human rights and for democracy and for the rule of law.
When Moldovan people are speaking about disinformation, most of them are thinking, first of all, about Russian disinformation. Sure. Are there any specific measure that you can propose to counter this Russian disinformation?
You know, I think you need to have an answer on the technological level. As I mentioned before, with artificial intelligence, also social media, and then we have the education. So important to have really a focus on education, and then transparency. I mean, to make transparent the information, to make a fact checking. It is difficult, you know, because even if it has been fact checked, you have people, they also take in all these conditions, they take also this information as an information. I think it is not only for Moldova, you know, it is a huge concern and threat all around Europe. But why? Because we are the continent where we are living in democracies. And the democracies are particularly in a difficult situation when you have strong disinformation developing. That's why it's so important for us to work on this. That's why I was, by the way, in Paris in the last 2 days, you know, for this summit on artificial intelligence, exactly to address those issues with our situation in Europe, being the continent of the democracy and also with this strong support for human rights.
Secretary General, let's talk a little bit about the situation in the region, about the security situation, about the war in Ukraine. And I would like to start this part of our discussion with an initiative that the Council of Europe had 2 years ago, to create a special tribunal for crimes of aggression against Ukraine. When will be this tribunal functional, and how strong and powerful will be this tribunal?
We hope it will be possible during this year, 2025, to negotiate the agreement and the convention for a special tribunal and to have it at the end of the year. But let me maybe explain why. Because, you know, we are living in a world where the level of impunity has never been as high as today since decades. And it's an interesting and really important question for all of us today. In which world do we want to live? And also our children and next generation. In a world where destruction, force, violence and impunity will prevail? Or do we prefer to live in a world where rule of law, rule-based relation, peaceful relation, and accountability when there is a crime will prevail? It is exactly the question. And on those questions, the Council of Europe has a central role to play with 3 pillars. The first pillar is the European Court for Human Rights. We have the Convention for Human Rights. And the European Court is addressing all violations of human rights in Ukraine since 2014, that means the beginning of the war, until September 22, the moment where Russia left the European Convention of Human Rights. First pillar. Second pillar, it is the Register of Damage that we created 2 years ago. Since 1 year, it is fully effective. And just now, right now, we have already 13,000 damage that have been registered, and it will allow, with a claims commission, with a full compensation mechanism, to have reparation. Second pillar. And the third one is exactly what you mentioned before, the special tribunal on addressing the crime of aggression. And why do we need this third pillar? In 2022, there was a huge majority of the countries present at the United Nations in New York deciding that there is a crime of aggression recognizing there is a crime of aggression from Russia on Ukraine. And then we saw that there is no jurisdiction competent to address this. From the moment where it is a recognition of a crime of aggression and no jurisdiction is competent, we need to create one. And that's exactly why we are trying to create a special tribunal addressing the crime of aggression. And I was in Brussels last week exactly for this, with the European Union, with a lot of countries participating to the discussion. And we hope that all conditions could be fulfilled to have this institution created by the end of this year.
A question that I think can rise here is why you need a tribunal like this if we have an international criminal court?
Because for any reason, and I'm not the specialist to say this, but there is a consensus to say that this international tribunal is not competent for this situation. And, for me, as a former politician and SG of the Council of Europe, the question is not to make a long discussion to know if it is right or not right. From the moment where there is this consensus, then we need to address the crime of aggression in another way.
Do you think that this tribunal that you want to have by the end of the year will be more powerful than the discard that they have? I mean, I want to understand what are your real hopes.
My hope, well, it's not my hope, it's the hope of all the countries, and not only, it's all the countries working in the core group to create this tribunal for this special tribunal. I think it is to make sure that we address all issues. That from the moment when you have the United Nations recognizing that there is, in this case, a crime of aggression, and then when we see that there is no jurisdiction competent to address this issue, then we have to create one. That's the first point. And then what it will mean for the next month and years, it will depend from this negotiation that we are expecting for this year between countries. It is not the Council of Europe is not able to do this from itself. We are able to offer a platform for negotiation, to have a place where it is possible to create this, and to have then an agreement between states, participating to this, and then, accepting an agreement, then the creation of the tribunal. And it will depend on the readiness, I would say, from all the states to engage with this issue.
There are a lot of talkings about the potential agreement, the peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia. And I would like to ask, what is the position of the Council of Europe? How this peace should be made?
Council of Europe, as I mentioned before, is an organization dedicated to human rights, rule of law, and democracy. It is really what we do, values-based, I would say, and that's why we are so strongly engaged for supporting Ukraine in the situation for the human rights or for democracy or for the rule of law. It is quite unpredictable at the moment to see what will happen with the new administration in the US. Everybody is speaking about this, What will it mean? I think for us, the most important thing is to support Ukraine, one of the member states of the Council of Europe, and not just for supporting Ukraine. It is supporting Ukraine, it's supporting the whole continent. At the end of the day, it is for supporting the values that it represents. That's the point, and we can just hope that it will be an end for the war, and with a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. I know it is always the thing that we are saying, and nobody is clear what it would mean at the end. But from our side, being united with the 46 member states, having Ukraine as a strong and an important member, which we are supporting as strong as we can, we will continue on this way.
My last question. It's about Georgia. Georgia has suspended its participation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And how do you comment the Georgian decision? And do you want the country to stay in the Council of Europe after this decision of leaving the Parliamentary Assembly?
Georgia is a member of the Council of Europe. It's one of the 46 members of the Council of Europe. I regret that it was not possible to continue the work together as we wanted, also to to amend or maybe to repeal this law, so-called law on foreign influence. But I think this whole discussion about foreign influence, it will continue to be an important matter for all of us with different views. I see this, and that's why we wanted to engage with Georgia, to address the issue with them, because this law is really a problem. I'm strongly convinced that the only way to solve problems is through dialogue. If it's possible to make some steps forward with dialogue, we'll continue to engage with Georgia. I think the ground to work now, it's not the best possible that we had in the last month. It is not better, it is worse than 2 months or 3 months ago, and we had a lot of demonstration. We are also strongly concerned by the law enforcement against the demonstrators in Georgia about violations of human rights. We are working really closely with them, with different organizations, with the Commission of Human Rights of the Council of Europe, with the Committee for the Prevention of Torture, working also with them. We will continue, and the fact that they are not more member for the time at the Parliamentary Assembly will not block I hope, the intergovernmental collaboration, because we must remain strongly committed to human rights, democracy and rule of law, not for the government there. We do this for the population in Georgia. We have 4 million people in Georgia with European aspirations, and I think we must also be present for them.
Verse, Secretary General of Council of Europe, thank you for this interview.
Thank you very much.